Uh, Today is 18 December 2022. Sleeping very bad as usual. Few days with good sleep night, but it's something that do not belong to my head. At least since 2018, we will have a report here considering things we did in the last maybe 15 days. Uh, December 17, Security Plan 2022-2028, UK Grid, considering the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crimes and the Independent Oversight Mechanism judicial charge in one specific area or against the criminal system exposed that this specific area must the judicial charge, which is the instrument used to charge the payroll, because the debtor system got viewed as a criminal system, we must have issued with the justice. We are using the judicial charge, must do seizures against the organized crime and transnational organized crime integrated by the public budget at this area. We have the values. We observe that users at the budget having decision indeed are criminals, even by silence. And according with the Constitution, at this place, it's described like this. And we will observe that we have a relation, kind of a causal relation, causality, which is the poverty under management and having as goal the misery will kind of put things really bad. And it's the idea, the general idea we will observe yet that if we have, for instance, a contract and one of the parts at this contract broke the contract by a misbehavior or a misconduct, must got if it was under influence of the criminal system or under domain or exploitation, and will lose the part at the contract. But will maybe have the possibility to complain this, for instance, if you are a British person, had a contract, and you broke the contract and received nothing, but you did this because you are under drug suppression or moral suppression of based on a criminal system against you or whatever, you can complain this at the judicial court on United Kingdom and prove that you are not part of the problem and that what indeed really exploited, to request the values that you receive at this contract against the players that made you be under the misconduct. If he was the court on United Kingdom got caught that had the exploitation of a person or something like this by drug, even the king can present this at the International Criminal Court. But of course, that if you are having the complaint against the organized crime by drug and moral suppression, you must consider that you can't be on drugs. You must have some kind of therapy or something like this to preserve and keep the legitimacy as claim, which is a request to get your part of the contract against the players that made you by bad influence to be at this loss that gone inside the contract. You kind of broke the contract. We have the judicial rule number 3, which was on 16 December, which is based the rule of percentage by values codified on segments, on the individualization and drill down. Those problematic values shouldn't be next to chairs, to judges that are for real. We had the holographic business model as development and tracer by cartier activity, which and other fancy companies that sometimes suffer at the Christmas and other periods. Assaults at the mall, at the stores, and having supported by fake records, you for sure will have no ways to complain. And the crook groups on public departments will obtain all things that sometimes are not deserved, especially by the use of criminal activity to support their needs. We are having the issue equally observing that in general the classic organized crime was today in the past kind of they are acting against the environment, I would say, to obtain power, and they do not made their regulations, I would say, against people that do not belong to the organized crime. It's a problem that goes inside and stays inside. But since things got so big, so huge, that the organized crime starts to against the environment, against innocent people that in general in the classic methods and model they do not kill innocent people, only who is inside the organized crime. And of course that these create problems, because they threaten the entire society, global community. And it's impressive how things go fast when you have the organized crime as the police department, the judges, because they kind of have no barrier or frontier or limits. And the things they do, in general, the organized crime is ruled and based on, three things: the greed, the violence, and the cowardice. And the combination of all things in an institutional level, especially the regulation that must be against the organized crime that got some way associated with, leads to the trust. It's the object of the antitrust justice. We will have the third part of our conversation today. We will observe that the United States and Europe as institution has internal fails, and if they do not solve those fails in a properly time, and those fails got big, of course that those institutions will suffer regulatory interference, and it's proven the decreasement as capacity to solve problems by no legitimacy to act. In general, the power belongs to the institution. The judicial power of the United States belongs to the United States. If the entire judicial system is corrupted and the Federal Bureau of Investigation had cleaned their own internal space, they will probably have the capacity to use the judicial power and solve the problem. And so the Interpol, in a global scale, if all judicial systems have no conditions to act, including the International Criminal Court, and they, clean their own environment, they will have the legitimacy to act, to operate. Kind of the gap at the power will be filled by the legitimacy able and the capacity to operate. We will observe that the United States, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, has corruption because it's huge. It's really big, and corruption is a natural problem of any kind of huge and big institution or organization, but it's not a natural thing. It's a problem. It's like the drug problem is a problem we must face like this. We observe that in the United States the CIA and the Secret Service maybe will have less problem as corruption because they are kind of reservoir dogs, and they it's more difficult by the things they do and the way they have to operate. We must face the corruption as a problem, even if it's a natural problem and it's still a problem. We will have like this: the reservoir dogs and the Federal Bureau of Investigation and other institutions with similar purpose are the hounds. The United States have the IIA and others, and so things must work without no excuse. America is huge and ahead as a macro complex of organizations. It's an environmental system filled by institutions carrying two basic purposes. One non-traditional, zero not traditional. Indeed, is how the division in the United States, the division of power in the US goes by political parties but seems corrupted and leads to the Fed, the Federal Reserve, which holds the third way as interest. Prisons of heads had immediately two effects as impact could cut influence and architecture, force new decision, exposing more members at the strategic level. It's ongoing like this since 2014 when you disable or dismantle any kind of organized crime scheme or activity in global scale, in large scale. And Europe has much more diversity of national feelings but can be described like two simple values since the Second Great War. It was the value number one pro-nation, the value number two pro-Europeans. It's a complex system without any kind of complexity. It's the liberalism on the regulation because facts got European as beasts, predators. Indeed, they have in all areas. Around the globe, all continents have. They can easily destroy an entire continent. It's bizarre. USA and center of the Europe, which is the Eastern Europe, the Western Europe, but all Europe at the Western system has ways to control their own beasts and really advanced technology and things that helps to prevent global destruction. So there's no reason to happen. Or large scale strikes by criminal purpose and things that you must unfortunately be against. And it's basically how the Western society go. It must remain because it's part of the global stability. Wish you a great week. We are ending the year. Everything that was supposed to do was made, delivered on time. The silence can be a crime, and it's not by my, kind of interest. And I'm in the single creditor by the circumstance and the behavior at the trial. See, no conflict of interest as possibility. And they can do donations in the future, or transference, or investment. See, simple to get.